All right, here we go with I Will Never Forgive You podcast, episode 13 feedback. So, let's get straight into it. We got a lot to do here. Starting off with Ariel. Kaguya-sama and Frieren both have female main characters, but I don't think anyone would ever argue that they are the worst part of the shows. My next pick for you also has a female main character that I think you'll love. Yeah, those are strong female characters. I don't remember specifically what I said, but I think I was talking about that I hadn't done many shows with main characters, and these are two of them, of course. You know, it's interesting. Obviously, what's going to turn people off is going to be different with every person, right? Like, you know, maybe. Well, okay, here's a really good example. One of my friends, she's a woman, but she has a thing about women being humble. Like, women have to be humble. Like if say the woman is really good at basketball, she can't say that she's good at basketball, even if she clearly is. Like, she could be Caitlin Clark, and in my friend's mind, she's not allowed to say that she's good at basketball or she's not being humble. And I don't, and she doesn't hold men to this standard. And I don't. It's some sexism. It's some internalized misogyny or something. Like, I've been talking to her about it. Like, you know, she's having a hard time coming off this. Like, you know, women have to be humble. Women can't be proud of what they can actually do, right? So, her watching a show where a female character is really good at fighting and is proud at fighting and will tell you, I'm going to kick your ass, she would find that character annoying because women have to be humble. So, everybody's, like, what people find off-putting about a character is going to be different for all of us. Every single one of us. So, you know, you can't, I don't think there's anything you can really narrow down as, like, you know, across the board. Like, we've even got people who say, like, you know, Killmonger was right, Thanos is right, and these are people that are clearly wrong, you know. So, what Thanos is right about a problem, he was not anywhere in the same time zone of being right about the solution. Just because he's right about the problem doesn't mean the solution is anywhere logical or, you know, coherent or sane, you know. So people are conflating the fact that, yes, he was actually addressing a problem that is a real problem, just like Killmonger was addressing a problem that's a real problem. The solutions are idiotic, and also they're murderous, you know, scumbags. So no, they're not right. But we can't even sometimes agree on who the bad guys are. So I don't think we're all going to agree, like, this is an off-putting character, this is an annoying character. But I think there's a few things that most people will agree would make the main character bad. Like, people love House. You know, he's objectively a bad person, but he's a good character, right? That's another thing, too. There's a difference between a bad person and a good character, and there's a difference between a good person and a bad character. So, there we are, right? So, yeah, I don't think I've seen any female main characters where they're the worst part of the show, but I've only had 2 or 3, you know, as stated here. Also, Ariel. Not that I want to defend Aaron at all, but apparently you're about to. But one point I'll push back on is he could have only erased the memories of other Eldians, not the entire world. So in that way, he was still backed into a corner. That's a very good point. I had forgotten about that plot detail. See, this is again what I talk about with Ariel, with this beautiful mind, steel trap memory box that she has. She remembers everything about every effing show she's ever watched. I don't understand, man. Like, you know, yeah, this tertiary character who appeared in 3 scenes, that's Michael Phillips, and he's the sister of the main character. And back in episode 2, you know, you remember he brought the red flower. That's why he's wearing a red flower shirt here in episode 515. How, man? How do you have all this shit memories? How do you remember this plot detail? I haven't seen Attack on Titan in a couple of years, I think. You know, well, maybe last year was like the last couple episodes, right? I didn't remember this detail, and I don't know. She's just got an amazing memory. Like, to be able to remember all this shit from all these different shows. I don't understand. But yeah, you're 100% correct. I had forgotten about that. Because the world couldn't forget, and they were going to be coming for him regardless. That is true. That makes my point a little harder, but I still stand by my statement. But there were, you know, I would have to sit down and, like, refresh myself on all the plot details and what the limitations were. There had to have been some other solution. There's no way the only solution was to kill most of the rest of the world. So he's heinous. Some of your other points still stand, though. The time jump being disorienting and him being ridden into a corner made the villain with no other options with the closed time loop thing. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. It's kind of like the limitations are imposed by the writer. And sometimes they're imposed by the writer to back the character in their corner. Two examples I can think of. I've never seen Man of Steel, but I know that he kills General Zod at the end, and apparently he did that to save some other Kryptonians or something, or save the world or something. Like Zod was about to do something, so literally the only solution was to let him do it or kill him, and so Superman had to kill him, which means Superman had to kill. But the writer put that in there. The writer made it that way. The writer made it so there was no other solution. The writer wanted Superman to kill Zod. So it's imposed by the writer. Sometimes fans will get it, well, these are the limitations, and they act like that those limitations come from nowhere or come from the real world. Like in the real world, you have your hand, trapped inside the rock. You have your penknife. This happened in real life. There's a movie about it. You either cut your arm off or you die. Those are your two options. There's no writer that imposed that, right? Like these are real world. You're backed into a corner. You don't have a choice. These are real world options, right? So in the real world, we don't have a choice sometimes, or we can't think of another choice. But in fictional worlds, the writer imposes these limitations. So, I mean, that is what it is, right? The other example I was going to give was in season 7, there's these two characters, and one of them kills the other. But the argument since then, in the past 30 years, has been the character who died should have been the character who lived, and the character who lived should have been the character who died. But people are saying, well, you had to kill somebody to, have this spell function, right? They're trying to do the spell, and so you had to kill them. So that's the only way that, that could happen, right? And the other character who died was not a murderer. He would not have killed the other person, right? So that's been the argument, right? My thing is, the writers imposed those limitations when they wrote the scene, because it was the same episode where they talked about this. You could just not do that. You could not make it so that it doesn't have to be a death, or make it so that you just have to bleed them. Cut their palm and bleed them, and that's it. But then the person you cut the palm, they die anyway from something else, or you were given a knife and a knife had poison on it, but you didn't know about it. There's so many ways you can get around him being a murderer. Which that one, the poison on the knife, where he actually did it and didn't realize it, but he still feel guilty. That was actually a pretty good one right there. There's plenty of ways you could have done it, and people been saying, "Oh, well, he would never kill anybody, so it could never have been him." No, it could have been him if the writers wanted it to be him. The writers put in the limitations they put in for the reason because they wanted that character to die. If they'd wanted to go the other way, it would have went the other way. So, as a fan, you can't hide behind the limitations that a writer imposes on the characters, and then say the characters had no choice. And if we say there should have been a different writing decision, you can't hide behind writing choices to say there shouldn't have been a different writing decision, which is what sometimes people do. The writing choices are part of the writing decision. So that's just a thing you need to keep in mind, right? But yeah, I mean, there was another way. This is the way the writer wanted to play out, so the writers had put this shit in here. They wanted it to be a closed time loop in there, So I just don't think it works. I think it needed more time, and even it sounds like even the writers aren't completely happy with the way that it worked out, and it sounds like the anime improved upon what the manga did, and he maybe even changed some stuff in the manga. It was just a cluster F. Sounds one of the things that sounds like what the problem was the deadlines, trying to meet the deadlines and all that shit. So I know the pressure of deadlines. So sometimes you rush or you cut corners because you're trying to meet these deadlines, and you would actually like to get 3 hours of sleep tonight. So I know the feeling well, but yeah, I just don't think it worked. I don't think it worked. All right, Kill Code. There is technically some more Fate series that I might have you react to in the future, but the quality is a bit hit or miss. It's mostly because the creator of Fate, Nasu, is focusing all of his attention on writing the Fate Grand Order, a gacha game. I will say the writing quality is amazing and probably some of the best work in my opinion, but it's at the expense of pushing all his other planned projects and sequels aside. I'm totally not annoyed at that at all. Yeah, I mean, this is what the problem people have with George R. R. Martin. He'd rather do everything else under the sun. He keeps announcing new projects, man. And then he gets mad that nobody's excited about these projects. And I get it. There are things I want to do. I want to react to Revival. I read the comic book back in the day. I'm really excited there's a TV series. First episode dropped. I was like, well, I'm going to do this week to week. Never had time. Now I've got the entire season downloaded. Still haven't had time. I want to react to From. I want to react to The Bear. I want to react to White Lotus. And I don't have time for any of these things. I would love to do it for the other channel, right? And maybe some for here. From feels like that would be a good one for here. It's kind of an anime type show from what I understand. But what would it look like if I start, spending time on From and start missing JoJo again? Although the JoJo views have really plummeted lately. At first I thought it was the two-parter storyline with the crazy chick. But they continued to be bad after that. So hopefully they pick up sooner. I'm going to have to download the JoJo back. Because we were going from 100 to 20. Like, that's weird. They would drop that much. Drop 80%. I don't know. Maybe people just don't like my reaction style. But I'm hoping it picks up in the next week. Or I might have to, push it to weekends to replace UU on weekends or something. I don't know. Anyway, say I was still doing JoJo every day. If I suddenly started missing JoJo and I started missing, some of the other things I'm trying to do, but then I'm spending time on Revival, what would that look like? People are like, well, you already had this commitment here. Why are you suddenly spending time on this other thing? Well, this other thing is a shiny new thing, right? It's something I want to do. It's shiny and new. So that's why I would do it, although I won't because I have obligations. But I think some of these other writers, they just want to do something else for a while, and I get that. I understand that, especially with George R. R. Martin. He spent 30 years working on this one book series, when before he would spend a couple years on a book, or maybe 3 or 4 years on a book series, and be done and move on to the next thing. He used to finish books. In the 70s and 80s, he would finish books. It's only here with Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire, that he doesn't finish books. So that's the complaint people have. Why are you focused on this other shit when you had this other obligation over here? So, and it's because it's a shiny new toy, right? You get a new toy for Christmas. You may have some really cool toys you got for birthday back in the summer, but now it's Christmas and now it's a shiny new toy. So that's what it is. But at least it sounds like this new shiny toy that he's working on is actually good, from what I gather from what you're saying. I will say it's hard to feel like that writing a game is the same as writing narrative fiction, because games are player driven. Unless the game's on railroad tracks, like Last of Us is on railroad tracks. You do the fights, but the game assumes you'll win the fights or you don't continue. So really, everybody experiences the same story for the most part. I don't think that's a very enjoyable kind of game, but maybe that's what we're talking about here. So, The Last of Us Season 1 was definitely well written, and apparently followed the game, so that game was well written. So, I guess you could have good writing in a game that's on railroad tracks, but that's not a great gaming experience. So I don't really know how that works, but other than that, yeah, I don't think any other kind of game that's not on railroad tracks could qualify as good writing. Good world building. The writers spend a lot of time on the world building. That would make sense. But if you have 3 or 4 narrative paths, I guess each narrative path could be well written. I don't know. I guess I haven't thought about it enough. But yeah, I mean, people want us. I think we want the narrative experience of a book or a manga or a TV show or a movie, rather than the narrative experience of, a game. That's what I think we're saying here. This is Barracuda. The only anime I remember having female main character and was good is Psycho-Pass. Now, here's the question. The way I read that sentence, you're saying the anime was good, not the character was good. Now, maybe I'm misreading that. The only anime I remember having female main character and was good, that tells me you're talking about the anime, is Psycho-Pass. What we're talking about is the character, not the show, not the anime. So, I think Luffy. You could argue Luffy's the worst character in his anime, but the anime is good, right? We're comparing the main character to the other characters in the anime, right? So Luffy's a great character, but he may be at least until he became, the recent events. I don't necessarily want to spoil what happens in the most recent episodes. But until the end of Wano, you could make a really strong case that he was the worst character in his own show. The least interesting character in his own show, mainly because he's dumb and, his powers, rubber powers, So now they're kind of paying it off, and now he's really not that anymore. But you could have made a really strong case. But the show was always good, and the characters are all good. So what we're talking about here is, it doesn't matter if the show's good or bad. Is the main character the worst character or the worst part of the show? Was what we were really saying. That's the conversation we're having. I'm trying to think, could you have a great character in a terrible show? The Blacklist became a very bad show, but the character was always great. Raymond Reddington. Heroes had a couple great characters for the most part, but was a trash show. Of course, one of the reasons it became a trash show is they cannibalized and assassinated all the characterization that they had. So even if they were good characters, they became bad characters. They also went up their own ass too much. They went back and backfilled a bunch of prequel shit, which just overcomplicated the lore and it wasn't necessary. I'm trying to think. Terrible show, good character. There had to be some more. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, especially anime. Because, like I said, the quality of shows I watch are curated for me, so I only watch the best of the best. But there have to be shows that are terrible, but the characters are great. And then there have to be shows the shows are great, but the character is terrible. Like, Seven Deadly Sins, at least the first couple seasons with the sex assault Wrath, definitely he's the worst character in the show. He drags it down, and I've heard people quit the show. It's from the very beginning, it's very off-putting. It doesn't even make sense with what we find out later. We find out later that, she's reincarnated and he's in love with her every time, so why would, it's misguided comedy relief. We've talked about that before, misguided comedy relief. It just doesn't work, man. So, terrible character, great show, good character, terrible show. We should probably explore that a little bit more. I think there's some meat on that bone. I hadn't really thought about that until this comment, but there's some meat on that bone. Ariel. I think in the poll for male protagonists, Melodis, we were just talking about this, he's Wrath. One, because people must ding him pretty hard for the essay. Honestly, if it weren't for that, he'd be almost a perfect protagonist and probably wouldn't even be brought into this kind of poll. True, but here's something that just occurred to me when you called him a perfect protagonist. Perfect protagonist is a Mary Sue. We don't want him to be a Mary Sue. Would he have any flaws if it wasn't for that? He has a flaw where he pretty much wants to do everything himself. That comes up repeatedly. But I don't know if that's enough to count as a flaw. It might still feel like a Mary Sue. You'd have to give him something. You have to do something with this character. And I'm not saying like you have to arbitrarily or shoehorn in flaws to characters once you've created the character. But there should be something that holds him back, something that makes him a little off-putting, something that irritates people. Just a little bit. So that he doesn't look like the creator's pet, like, the Mary Sue. Yeah, I mean, I guess, that's his only real flaw. Maybe that's what the writer is trying to do. Give him a flaw, because it does kind of go away. And she was always on board with it, too, by the way. It seemed like she never protested. I don't think she did. Maybe the very first time. But it didn't seem like she ever protested it, so it wasn't vile. But I don't know, like, now you called him a perfect character, it does make you wonder if this was just intended to be, this is a writer intending it to be a flaw, and it just kind of went off the rails, right? Interesting. Hadn't really thought about that. I guess another flaw is he doesn't really read in his friends. He doesn't give them the information that may be necessary. So he's a little secretive. But still, that's another one of these really, subtle flaws that you need to watch almost the entire show to really pick up on. You need some kind of a flaw up near the beginning. Maybe they're a little arrogant. and then they get knocked off their high horse, and then that's character development, right? Or maybe they don't have a sense of humor, or maybe they don't trust people. Like there has to be some kind of flaw somewhere, right? And I don't think he had that, so that was a problem. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. This is Mata Koyo. So a few things I find boring about anime is a lack of good, evident writing. I want to be able to go, now here's good writing when I'm watching a show. And this isn't something I found with those shows, at least from what I watched. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there, right? Like, I'm watching Teen Titans, and I realized Raven is an emo teenager, right? And she has the power of darkness. She can create little dark circles and get people. She can pick you up in a dark circle and slam you against the wall, or put up a dark circle to shield herself from attacks. So she uses darkness to defend herself. And she's an emo teenager. She's emo. They thrive in the darkness and melancholy, and they do that to protect themselves. When teenagers are emo, like they're afraid of being hurt, and they're afraid of being vulnerable, and they're afraid of putting themselves out there and getting laughed at or mocked, or like people not liking what they see. So they hide behind I'm better than everybody else, and I'm just dark and melancholy. They hide in the darkness. Real, actual teenagers cloak themselves in the emo darkness to protect themselves. And we have an emo teenager who uses literal darkness to protect herself. That's just brilliant writing. That is brilliant writing. That's the kind of shit you're talking about. The little extra details that you don't even pick up on until you really think about the shit, or maybe you watch it multiple times. I'm lucky enough I picked up on it when they had our centric episode. But that's the kind of shit we're talking about. You want that extra layer where it's like, wait a minute, this is actually really smart. Look at them. Look at how they did this. Yeah, like Sopranos has it. The really good shows have it. There's a lot of with One Piece, there's a lot where it's like the fruit power a person gets matches their personality, and it slowly dawns upon you as we move along. For some people, it might take 4, 5, 6, 700 episodes to realize it, but it slowly dawns upon you. The shit isn't arbitrary. People get the powers that reflect some aspect of the personality or their aspirations, and I just think that's that again what we're talking about depth, right? We're talking about depth. You don't want shallow storytelling. You want deep storytelling. And I can see where someone would be bored if it's just paint by numbers shallow stuff, which most children's TV is, which is why adults are less interested in children's TV, because it's just paint by numbers. What you see is what you get. Which is why I'm a little surprised they did that in Teen Titans. That's sophisticated for a children's show. Another thing I find boring is a lack of philosophical themes and lessons. So a casual show would be quite boring to me, which is why I don't prefer a lot of newer anime. Though this is something I've developed as I've grown older. Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily need that in every show. It is interesting when it comes up. It depends on what we're talking about, Like, I just saw a movie with Nicolas Cage. And it's called Dream Scenario, and I'm not going to really spoil it for you. You should definitely watch it. I just did a reaction to it if you're on Patreon. Tier 3, which ironically is the podcast tier. So if you're supporting me on a podcast tier, you'll be able to check that movie out. But he is a person who is a boring man, and nobody really noticed him. And then he gets a thing where he starts showing up in everybody's dreams all around him. He just shows up in people's dreams all over the place, right? And so now everybody notices him, and he goes viral, and like everybody notices it. But come to find out, having everybody notice you isn't as cool as he thought it was going to be, and it actually destroyed his life. So the thing he most wanted for decades, probably at least years, but the thing he really wanted was to be noticed, and then when he got what he wanted, it destroyed him. So that's really cool. That's the kind of thing I think you're talking about. Deep philosophical stuff, right? Like, it's just the person who wants to be noticed is suddenly noticed by everybody because he's appearing in dreams. And that's where you use like the supernatural, magical realism, paranormal shit to talk about something that is in part. A lot of people have that in their lives. Like, they just feel like they're boring. They feel like they're beneath notice, and nobody notices them or cares about them. And that's most of the time. Like I can go, I can walk through 6 stores and 2 restaurants, and nobody will notice me. And if I gave a shit about that, which I don't, then I would be like, wow, man, I'm just walking around, nobody knows me. So then people start doing like flamboyant clothes or jewelry or tattoos or whatever it takes to be noticed because they want to be noticed, right? They want to feel like they make an impression as they pass through a room. I'd rather just slide through the room and keep moving and nobody notices me because I was probably noticed too much as a kid, right? Stepfathers beat me up and shit. So there's a whole psychology there, right? You could go the other way, where it's like, I don't want to be noticed because when I was noticed as a kid, I got beat up, right? You wanted to be quiet as a mouse when you were a kid, slink in from school and go up to your room and then not be noticed so you won't get the violence, right? So you could go the other way with it. But there's definitely some cool psychological themes in that movie and in so many of the things we do, right? It's harder, I think, to do that kind of thing in long-running, long-form storytelling. Because especially if we're talking about, like, any kind of live-action show that has a writer's room. Now, Red Dwarf was written by one man. He wrote all the scripts. So that'll be thematically consistent throughout. Brian Fuller writes a lot of his own scripts. Who's the guy who did Ally McBeal? David E. Kelly. He writes a lot of his own scripts. So his shit's gonna be thematically consistent. Who's the guy that did West Wing and the Newsroom? He writes most of his shit. He's gonna be thematically consistent. Well, for the most part, when you have a writer's room, you have different writers writing different scripts. It's gonna be very, very hard to keep it thematically consistent and keep these themes running throughout. Chris Carter, X-Files is another good example, one who accomplished that. He shit the bed in a lot of other ways, but at least the characters were consistent throughout the series, and some of the themes were consistent. I think it's hard, and I think you're shitting on newer anime, but I wonder if newer anime it's easier to do what you're talking about because they have actual seasons for one thing. It's not just hey, just here's 500 straight. We don't take breaks. It's every week. We don't have seasons. We don't have a hiatus. Here's 500 straight of Bleach. Here's 500 straight of Naruto. Here's 1,000 straight of One Piece, right? Like, they have character. They have arcs. They have story arcs. But at least One Piece has clearly defined story arcs. I felt like, the Naruto didn't really have as clearly defined story arcs. And Bleach so far hasn't either, But now, if you're sitting down and you're like, okay, we're gonna make this is a 12 episode season, and maybe we'll get another season next year. You're gonna try to have like a central message or a central theme throughout those 12 episodes. And you're doing it all together, and then you're taking a break. I think it'd be harder if this year 2025 we're doing 40 episodes during the course of this year. There'll be a little hiatus here and there, holiday breaks or whatever. But we're doing 40 episodes during this year. Get started. It'd be a lot harder to have a consistent message or themes or, stuff like that. So I think the old way made it more difficult. Now, they were adapting manga where maybe the author had a lot more time to think about that and put that in there. And if you're adapting it, it's going to translate over, right, for the most part. So maybe you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that I think it would be easier to do that now with the current anime structure than it would have been 20 years ago. But like I said, I don't know because I've only seen pretty much, the sum total of the anime I've seen. I haven't seen any anime that isn't on one of my channels, or Patreon or something. So, the sum total of what I've watched. I probably have watched 60% old shit, 40% new shit. It might even be 70-30 if we're talking about just runtime because, like, for instance, I saw Chainsaw Man, but that's only 12 episodes, right? That's a relatively modern one. So, I don't know. I may not know what I'm talking about this, but in theory, I think it would be easier now than it would have been back then. If I were still a kid, I would probably enjoy them. Yeah, I enjoyed Airwolf. I enjoyed Buck Rogers. I enjoyed Knight Rider. Wouldn't now. That's why I've never gone back to look at them, because I don't want to be sad about my childhood. Yeah, kids enjoy crap. Hey, it's our formative years. We're just figuring out storytelling. You can't throw too much at us, right? You got to keep it simple. The KISS principle: keep it simple, stupid, right? As I enjoyed Pokemon, oh no. I guess Pokemon was a show, right? Not just a game. I don't really know or understand any of that, you know. I know people are running around trying to chase Pokemon in the real world recently. Recently being like 4 or 5 years ago. But I never really thought about it being a show until just now, so maybe it was a show too. I don't know. As a kid, but now whenever I return to it, it's very grating to get through. Yeah, I'm assuming it's terrible. Ash, is that his name? So I guess what happened was you had the Pokemon anime. Then they eventually made a game out of it, and the game became more popular than the anime. And so there's a TV trope for that. I can't remember the category, the label. But it's when the adaptation becomes more popular than the original, and people forget that it was ever an adaptation at all. Like, growing up, I never knew Wizard of Oz was a book first. A lot of people don't know Casablanca was a book. You see, there's Die Hard was originally a book. That's a really good one. Nobody knows Die Hard was a book, right? So this is a case where I never knew. I just thought it was a game that they made, and so the second incarnation overtakes and outstrips the first incarnation so much people don't even realize there was a first incarnation. I never knew there was an anime. I just thought it was a game. That's what happened to this. And finally, I think you'd agree that I don't find the characters interesting or intriguing. They all seem to be the same character with a generic meh writing aura. And while I might still enjoy a show if I watch it in full, I've already watched enough shows, movies for my brain, so I am content on not watching new ones. It's interesting. With new characters come new possibilities. You're talking about how a lot of characters feel samey. And a lot of people in real life are samey, Like, there's 7 billion of us. We don't have 7 billion. We hate this. Every single one of us hates this, and me included. I think I'm unique. Whoa, I'm so special. I'm unique. I have a way of seeing the world that nobody else has. That's why I have a channel, and I put this way of seeing the world out there. And people are like, ooh, wow, I never thought of that, right? This is what I think. This ain't the reality, man. There's a lot of shit I've said that you probably have thought yourself. Word for word. I'm not original. Like, I don't have original thoughts handed down by God. Like, I want to believe that I do. I want to believe I'm unique and original. But come on, man. There's 7 billion people. 7 billion. Do you realize how large a number a billion is? I can't remember, so I'm going to have to look this up real quick. A billion seconds ago, it was 1959. A billion seconds ago. Those are just seconds. It was 1959, man. That's 41 plus. That's 66 years. A billion seconds is 66 years. That's how many effing people there are in this world. Times 7. There are 7 billion people in the world, man. There are not 7 billion different personalities. There may be 1,000 different personalities. Just put them in the Xerox. You put one of these 1,000 personalities in Xerox, copy out 1,000,000 of them and throw them over here. Put the next person out in the Xerox, copy out 1,000,000, throw them over there. Like, just throw them all up in the air so they get mixed up. You don't want to have all of them in the same place. Like France, It's all the same personality there. Just kidding. I don't know if I have any French patrons. If I do, I won't have them for very long. Your food is great. I love butter. Don't love snails. So, much as we would, all of us, every single one of us, like to believe we have an individual, unique, never seen before, and will never be seen again personality, we don't. We don't. I hate it. I hate confronting that. I hate thinking about it. I have a pretty healthy ego. I would like to think I keep my ego in check, because there's nothing worse than a raging narcissist or an egomaniac. It's so annoying. I try to keep it in check. But it's pretty healthy. I feel like I'm fairly unique, but not really. No. There's 7 billion. There's like 400 million other people just like me out there somewhere. Various ages. Exact same personality. Depressing to think about. There's nothing new under the sun, man. We're all the same. We're not all the same, but there are a lot of us just like this, right? So, how can you make unique characters when there are 33,000 anime out there? 33,000 anime. There's only 1,000 personalities. I'm pulling that number out of my ass, but it feels about right. If we were to sit there and break it down, the different personality types. So 33,000 anime. How are you going to make anybody stand out? You can't. And sometimes they will do it by having some really bizarre. Let me look up the 10 most rare character disorders or mental disorders or character tics or traits or. So wait a minute. There's never been a character in anime who hops on one leg even though they have two legs and has Tourette's. So this character will have Tourette's and they hop on one leg. So I don't know that the personality matters. I think the choices matter because choices can be unique. Now, I mean, because situations can be unique. If you break it down enough, the choices are the same. Like, you have a choice: betray your friends or risk your life. That's a A-B choice. That's just one choice. But then you add details to it. You keep adding more details until it feels like a very unique situation. That's how you do that. So you can even make it even more complicated by having somebody who's generally a coward do something brave. So I think it's the choices. And I think if you don't watch enough of a show to see some of their choices and to be intrigued by their choices and to be mystified by the choices possibly, which means the show shouldn't over-explain things, then they all feel the same and then you drop the show. Because I do know what you mean. I've seen a hell of a lot of TV. But I have an unquenchable thirst for story because I'm a storyteller. Not everybody's like that. You may have an unquenchable thirst for art because you're an artist. Or an unquenchable thirst for music because you're a musician or you wanted to be a musician. Or that's where your affinity is. I have an unquenchable thirst for story. I just want to constantly consume more and more story. More story. More. Give me more. Feed me, see more. Right? So I'm never going to be tired of this stuff, but I do get what you mean. Because sometimes I do get tired of a genre. And I flip genres for a while and watch some other genre or something. I can even get tired of story. I've only seen I haven't seen the last season of Evil. I want to watch the last season of Evil. I really do. I love the show. But I had binge watched like seasons 3 and 4 back to back, and then I've had enough for a while. So I kind of get what you mean. It's like you said, you only have so much in your brain. Your unquenchable thirst must be about something else. Like maybe it's music or art or cooking or whatever. Like if you have an unquenchable thirst for cooking, you would never get enough recipes. You'd never watch enough cooking shows. Whatever it is, we all have the something. We all have the something. For me, it's story. But it can be anything for anybody, right? So I am content on not watching new anime, though I do occasionally. For example, I recently watched the Korean TV show Squid Game, which another one that's on my list that I just have not had time to get to, which I really enjoyed. Followed by watching the anime it was inspired from, Kaji, which I enjoyed a lot. So the question is, have you watched Alice in Borderland? Because I'm told that Alice in Borderland is kind of like Squid Game, but better. So I'm going to eventually watch Squid Game. But if you haven't watched Alice in Borderland, I'm actually doing reactions to that right now, so you should check that out. Spinipus? I don't know. I'm aware of the name. I've seen it many times. I can't figure out what the avatar is. It feels like it's a hand with the pinky up, but no thumb up. Feels like this, although to me it looks like this, right? Maybe it's this. Or it's the Statue of Liberty with a flag over it. Or I can't tell what the hell that avatar is. I don't know, because Statue of Liberty has an arm up. There's something sticking up on one side. And there's some color that I can't quite make out. Anyway, laugh my ass off. I'm glad I'm not the only one who can't stand Light from Death Note. Yeah, F that dude. F it. But I actually like the detective. Man. His name was L. Yeah. By the way, let's have both characters' names start with the same first letter. Dumbass. L and Light. Yeah, that's not confusing for somebody like me. He doesn't seem as arrogant as Light, but I see where you're coming from. They are portrayed too perfect for my taste. I think it was L actually that was the problem because I think it was, I don't remember the details now, but somebody was coming into Japan, like a detective from another country was coming into Japan. And Light anticipated how he was going to come in, and then L anticipated that Light would anticipate that. And I was like, how the hell would you think that? How could you possibly think he would anticipate that? You don't even know that he would know about it. It was something like that. It was just a road too far for me. It was like, come on, there's no effing way you would have anticipated that. And see, that could have been really fun, where it'd be like, okay, I've thought of everything, and then he comes in and the dude gets killed or whatever. It's like, damn, that's the one thing I didn't think of. Shit, he got the better of me this time. But no, we always, all of us, both of us, always think of everything at all times. None of it, neither one of us could ever make a mistake. It's so annoying. The animal sounds made by humans. I just saw another one. Boruto. They had a human doing a cat. Oh, stop it. Can be a little weird sometimes. I remember Choo Choo from One Piece. Who the hell was Choo Choo? Maybe that was a dog. Bad. The dog was bad and the show should feel bad. That's what got me off on this. I had never noticed it in anime. Of course, that's one of the first ones I watched. I had never noticed it in anime. By the way, somebody left a comment on my the very first episode of One Piece that I reacted to a couple years ago. They left a comment. Well, I guess I'm going to rewatch the entire series again. Kind of made me want to do that. Boy, I wish I had the time. But yeah, if that was a dog, it was really bad. I love how upset it gets. It gets you. Well, it's stupid, man. It's stupid and it's bad, and you should feel bad, not you, but the show. I find it funny when they do those sounds, but I get where you're coming from. It can be a bit off-putting. It's just, we're trying to be immersed here, man. Like, I want, see, that's another thing about me. I want to be immersed in the story. That's why I hate breaking the fourth wall. It can be done, and people have done it very well, and I've laughed at it sometimes. But generally speaking, I don't want you breaking the fourth wall because I want to be immersed. I want to feel like this is something real. And I can really get into it if I feel like it's something real. I start feeling like it's just a story and I'm not engaged. And you've seen some of those stories where, what the hell is it? Well, Gintama's kind of that way. I am not emotionally invested in Gintama. I am laughing at it and it's fun. But as much as they break the fourth wall and shit, like, you know, they're constantly reminding you, hey, this is a story. Hey, this is a TV show. Hey, don't forget, it's a TV show. Don't you effing forget. This is a goddamn TV show. They're just constantly reminding you. So, I'm not emotionally invested in characters when I try to do a heartfelt story, which they've tried a couple times. You can't have it both ways. So, for me, I love to get immersed in the stories. And when you have a cat sound like a person trying to sound like a cat, or that terrible ass dog, when they were doing, by the way, they were doing heartfelt flashbacks. The dog was really sad. His owner died or some shit, so he's going to wait by the store until the owner comes back, and the owner's dead, so he's not coming back, or whatever the hell that was. You can't get us emotionally invested in this sad dog story if you got a human going, ruff, ruff, ruff. Shut up. Like, you can't have both ways, man. You're trying to make us cry over this dog, but also ruff, ruff, ruff. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. So, like I said, you should go cry in a car because you did a bad thing. Make better choices. Alright, this is Kill Code. Unfortunately, Daro the super hacker is actually the protagonist in another visual novel, Robotics, Notes Dash. What is with these titles in this guy's stories, man? He has the wildest ass titles. Which is a sequel to Robotics Notes, Robotics Notes? Another entry in the larger Psy-Ad franchise. Steins Gate, Chaos Head. I guess he does like the colon, doesn't he? Or is that a semicolon? I think it's a semicolon. He does like that. The premise is that he's visiting the island where the protagonists from the last visual novel were at, and shenanigans ensue. Hey, I like shenanigans ensuing. I will say there's some really cool stuff in it, including some stuff involving the Noah 4, weaker version of Noah 2. which was the machine that created the artificial delusions and chaos head. But my God, Daro is a POV character. Yeah, I kind of think I know where you're going here. 3D girls. Ugh. And with that comes his inner thoughts. Oh, say less. Please, Daro, say less. Constantly throughout the whole visual novel. Oh boy. It's a lot of him fawning over the schoolgirl protagonist, which is even weirder because he already has a wife and a kid at this point. As if it couldn't get weird enough. Everyone was so excited to finally see all the different series start interconnecting and coming together, but it was single-handedly ruined by Daro's inner monologue about food and girls. Probably food with girls, knowing that some bitch. Yep, he's another one that needs to make better choices. Yeah, that just doesn't work, I guess. But at least the author was consistent with the character. Because if you didn't have that going on in his head, you would think something's wrong. And it would be wrong. This is Hunter Stone. For the history of manga video, you should look at the person Osamu Tezuka. He is considered the godfather of manga and is the creator of the series Astro Boy. Well, I'm going to go look him up right now because this is the end of the comments for the podcast video. I was going to take a break anyway, and while I'm taking my break, I'm going to go look him up. It sounds interesting. All right, let's move on to the feedback. Feedback. Yeah, I guess. The second video Q&A, whatever. Hunter Stone. These next few are going to be from Hunter Stone. Sorry if I made it sound like I was twisting your words about annoying fans. Wasn't meaning to. Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's all love, right? Like, I'm never going to be offended. Like, I mean, obviously, if you got drunk and launched a personal attack or something, like, I guess I could be offended. But I can't imagine being offended through the discourse, right? Like, we're having a conversation. We misunderstand each other, it's fine. Andy and I misunderstand each other a lot, it's fine. Like, it's just discourse, right? Like, there's no personal feelings involved here. Like, we may disagree on something. You and I disagree a lot. Me and Andy disagree a lot. It's all love, man. Like, you know, it's not personal. Like, there's no, like, emotion attached to any of this. It's an exchange of ideas. And you have to do it that way because, like, you know, I think that when you start injecting emotion into your ideas, like, you know, you can't think clearly and you're not open to changing your mind. You know, you see the people, like, they're clearly just never going to change their mind because they're emotionally invested in this thing being true, right? So that's when you start running into problems. That's where you start getting bitter feelings and getting the feelings hurt and all that shit. But here, we're just talking about TV shows, man. And some philosophy and some life shit, you know. So, I don't think the stakes are that high. Really. You know, I mean, with Andy and I were talking about a anime that is like 30 years old. Can you imagine getting up in your feelings about that? Like something 30 years old? Like, I guess you can imagine that because people still get pissed off about the original Star Wars movies. And that shit came out in 77 through 83. So I guess it doesn't matter how old something is, you can still get in your feelings about it. But I don't, you know, it's not happening here. It's all good. So, I don't know that I thought you twisted my words, but I was just trying to make it clear because I think we had mission creep in our conversation. Our conversation has started out being about here's what makes fans annoying, and then had creeped into fans who do this are annoying. All fans who do this one thing are annoying, which is not the actual original statement, right? The original statement is some fans who do this thing can be annoying, and then the conversation creeped over into fans who do this thing are annoying, right? So, like, it was just mission creep, I think is what it really was. You call Under the Dome a bad series when I actually finished it, unlike Breaking Bad, which I also didn't finish, or which I didn't finish. So, which is a better series? Well, I finished the movie Xanadu. It's one of the worst movies ever made. It is objectively terrible. I still like it. I finished it. So I don't think finishing something is a judge of the quality. You know, again, it's like what I said before, though. Like, this really is the heart of the matter. If you love the characters, you're in for the ride. It doesn't matter how objectively good or bad the story is. I still want to know if there's a story with great characters, but the story is trash. Vampire Diaries might be. Those characters, but then again, every time the story goes bad, it starts... See, all these stories I'm thinking about, Heroes, Vampire Diaries, they start great, and then they shit the bed and go off the rails, right? I need an example where the show was always bad, but the characters are great. I need to I need to find that. Where is that? Like there has to be stories where that is true, right? It was always bad, but the characters are great. I'll have to think about it some more. But here, it's like you didn't fall in love with Jesse and Walt or any of the other characters, Hank, any other characters in Breaking Bad, so you didn't stick with the series because you quit because you weren't in love with the characters, and so you should quit. If you're not in love with the characters by the end of season 2, quit Breaking Bad. Don't watch anymore. With Under the Dome, again, great characters. I love the characters. A lot of the characters in Under the Dome, I really like them. One of the biggest problems they had is my favorite character they killed off at the beginning of season 2. Stupidly killed off. Didn't make any sense. I don't know what the hell they were doing there. They're trying to pivot to something else or whatever, but get rid of an actress, I guess. But I actually liked the characters. This actually, Under the Dome may be an example because I think it was probably always bad. I feel the first season pretty much followed the first half of the book, so it was mostly good. It had problems from the very beginning, but it was mostly good, and then it just got more and more shit as it went along, right? Because they're trying to tell a long-running story based on a book that was like close-ended, like it was one book, one story, and that was it. And it was supposed to take place over a certain amount of time, and that was it. So to make it take place over a longer period of time, you had to change details. And changing those details raises all kinds of questions and creates all kinds of plot holes. So that's the biggest problem with Under the Dome. Was they were trying to take something that was closed-ended and make it open-ended. And in the Dead Zone, it worked. They pulled it off. They really, even though the Dead Zone, like the final season, shit the bed, maybe the final 2 seasons shit the bed, they still pulled it off. Like they nailed it. Turning one book into a 5-season TV series is no small feat. They nailed it. They pulled that off. Under the Dome, it wasn't as successful. They couldn't pull it off. But if you love the characters in Under the Dome and you don't love the characters in Breaking Bad, that's how you can stick with one over the other, and the objective quality of either series is not really the question there. It's about what do you love the characters or not. That's what I think's going on here. Jokes aside, wait a minute. You were just joking? God damn it. Why'd I spend 5 minutes on it? No, jokes aside, I was like 10 years old when I watched Under the Dome, but I actually remember having good feelings about the series. I remember the series ending with a really interesting cliffhanger. Like I said, I liked it. I don't know how long it ran. I think I made it through the end of the second season. It was okay, man. I think one of my biggest problems was I had read the book. Like, I think if I hadn't read the book, I would have had a more fun time with the show. It's an interesting concept. I love the idea of you just being in a glass bowl, right? Not being able to get out, but being able to see people through there. And what would the government response be? All that stuff was very interesting. So, what the hell am I? I wasn't doing anything. I just started recording and immediately put these on. What the hell's wrong with me? I'm like Pavlov's dog, man. I hear the bell, my tongue starts salivating. Idiot. I also have the Stephen King book. Have you read it? Is it any good? The Stephen King book, it's in my top 10 favorite Stephen King books. Hey, it's going to be a short, like my Q&As are getting shorter because I'm getting fewer questions and comments. So we have time. Let's go into this for a minute. My all-time favorite Stephen King novel ever was Dune by a mile. It's my all-time favorite Stephen King novel ever, Dune. For personal reasons, I was having a rough time in my life when I first read it. And he's such an interesting character, and it's such an interesting villain, and the powers are so interesting, and he's an artist, but still the creative like thing about it, where it's like your creativity becomes a weapon and becomes a power, is so interesting, and just everything about Wiseman is one of my favorite side characters ever. It's possible Dune is my all-time favorite novel from any author. I'd have to really think about that a lot more, because I have a lot of favorite authors. John Irving's really good. There's a couple of Dean Arcus novels that are in my probably top 20. Before he, just I don't know what they'll happen to him, stroked out or something. His last 20 years have been trash. Anyway, Stephen King. Dune is number 1. The Stand is number 2. I'm sure we've all heard of The Stand. It is number 3. Bag of Bones is number 4. And I always say that Bag of Bones and Dumaki are companion novels. They cover a lot of the same ground. They're doing a lot of the same things in different ways. And, both, one's a writer, one's an artist. I love reading those 2 books back to back. And Stephen King read the audiobook, but the audiobooks for both of these are excellent, by the way, Dumaki and Bag of Bones. Stephen King read the audiobook for Bag of Bones, did a great job, and then he had like a 30-minute Q&A with the producer after the fact, which is very interesting in the audiobook. It's an interview about the novel. Fantastic. I cannot recommend the audiobook for Bag of Bones enough. Same with Dumaki. There was some actor who did Dumaki narration, but he was great. Number 5. Probably Under the Dome. I think I would put Under the Dome there at number 5. It was great. It's a really great self-contained story. Yeah, I'd have to put it there. And you notice a lot of my favorites are his later work. I've always been a Stephen King fan, going all the way back to the 70s, right? I think I read The Shining around 1979. I was way too young to have read it, but I did. I read it during the wintertime, and it was really scary. Because it was wintertime, it was getting close to Christmas, and the same thing was happening in the book, and I wasn't that much older than Danny at the time. So it scared the shit out of me. Speaking of Shining, that would be number 6. Number 7 would be Christine, oldie but goodie. Number 8 would be Revival. Is that what it's called? Yeah. Revival. Probably the last great novel he's written. He got into that pulp crime crap I just refused to read since then. So the shit he's been putting out since Revival has just been trash as far as I'm concerned. It's a genre I don't like. I don't like the genre. So, if I don't like the genre, I'm not going to enjoy it. It doesn't matter how good the writer is. And Stephen King is a great writer. I just don't like the genre. Then for 9, I would put the entire Dark Tower series. Might as well just put it all there. The first one's hard to get through, and then it gets really good after that. The first one he wrote when he was in college. He really should have done another pass on it before he put it out there for us. And it took him a long time to finish it. That was A Song of Ice and Fire, even though he actually finished it. And number 10, boy, that'd be hard. So many great books. I think I'd have to put Pet Sematary at number 10. So, probably if you were to look at that list, half old, half new. Because there's the stories he wrote before his car accident, and there are stories he wrote after his car accident, and they were very different things. Oh, Dreamcatcher should be somewhere on that list. Shit. Let's push Pet Sematary out and put Dreamcatcher in there. I think it was the first thing he wrote after the accident. Those first couple books he wrote after the accident were great. I think he did Dark Towers after that. They were great, man. They were fantastic. He was really on his game after that. I think he'd been kind of sliding a little bit. So there was early era Stephen King. Then there was his cocaine era, and all of his cocaine books were great, absolutely fantastic. Then you have the post cocaine era, pre accident era, which those books pretty much suck. Then you have his immediate post-accident era. And then you'd have what I'd call his modern era. And now he's in his, pulp fiction era. Kiss my ass with that crap. Mr. Mercedes. So, there we are. But yes, to answer your question, Under the Dome is a great, great book. He also says he wouldn't mind an Under the Dome podcast. Well, we just had a Stephen King podcast a bit. So, we're halfway there. Whoa. Accidentally gave me a thumbs down there for a second. I wonder if... I always wonder what happens if you give somebody a thumbs down. I've never given somebody in the comments, not me doing it, but in the comments. Do people see that? I've never noticed me getting a thumbs down. Does it take away one of the thumbs up? I've always wondered about that. Because there are some comments I like, bro, I wish I could take... Because in Reddit, you can take away one of their upvotes, right? By downvoting. So for the shitty comments, you would just really like to downvote them. But I don't know that it works that way in YouTube, unfortunately. Last one from Hunter Stone. You're a writer because you want to tell stories because you want to entertain. You're not a writer so you can program people into some specific ass ideology. Tell that to an English teacher. Yeah, there's levels to this shit. I think a lot of times, especially before we started teaching writing in college, the themes and the ideologies and maybe the points people were trying to get across were unknown to the author. Like, was who's that asshole that did the Narnia series? C.S. Lewis. Was C.S. Lewis consciously aware that he was trying to cram Christianity down our throats? Probably. But if he wasn't, this would be what I'm talking about. Here's a better one. Was Isaac Asimov... No, H.G. Wells. Was H.G. Wells consciously aware that he was telling us, be aware of technology and I'm afraid of where technology is taking us? Was he consciously aware of that, or was he just trying to entertain with stories? I think that's more nebulous. Now, he may have personal letters he's written where he is consciously aware. I'm sure. But see, the thing is, too, if we go back too far, people were writing with the intention to program people. Like, there was a thing. Like, they're trying to program moral messages. They're trying to program political ideologies. Like, I'm sure there's Russian literature after the revolution that was specifically to that purpose. They're trying to program Christian themes like C.S. Lewis and these people. So, yeah, that's there. But I think a lot of these people weren't. They were just trying to entertain, or Charles Dickens was just trying to make money. But I think he cared about telling a good story, too, you know? But I don't think, like, Charles Dickens is a good example. I don't think he was really trying to cram any message down anybody's throat. There may have been messages in there. You know, it's kind of hard to avoid because you get into a thing where, okay, character does bad thing. Now you have two choices. Does he get away with it? Or does he get punished for it by fate or by actual circumstance? Like, you know, one thing leads to another and they catch him. And, you know, for me, it would be, does it make a better story if he gets away with it? Will it stick with you? Will you think about it? It's like, damn, I can't believe he got away with that. Does that stick with you? Do you think about it? Or does it piss you off and that still sticks with you? The story will stick with you. You kind of want the story to stick with you, the reader. You don't want them to forget about it in 2 days. So sometimes you're trying to tell an interesting story and then have an ending that will stick with them, that they will remember the story next year. Everybody remembers The Jaunt. Stephen King has written 200, 300, 400 short stories. Everybody remembers The Jaunt more than any other story because of the way it ended. So I think that, like, that's what people are trying to do a lot of times. But English teachers might say, well, you know, if they get away with it, they're, you know, you're teaching the audience that it's okay to be a criminal and you can get away with crime, and you're encouraging crime and violence. The movies had that. Hollywood had this rule for a while. I think it was the 40s, maybe the 50s as well. You couldn't show a criminal get away with the crime. He had to be punished at the end. He had to die or be locked up. You can't show a criminal. Can you imagine having that kind of handcuffed on your story? You're telling a very interesting story, but you can't show them getting away with it? Well, what if that makes the story more interesting? What if it opens up possibilities for a future story? Or it just thematically is what you want to do? It's not that crime pays. It's that this dude has been shit on his whole life and he finally got over in the system for once because he finally took action instead of being passive. That could be the message. But the only message they see is he committed a crime and got away with it. You're encouraging crime. You know, recut your movie. Idiotic. I just don't agree with any of that. I think you should be trying to entertain. That's what you should try to do. That's what I believe. I know there's a lot of people that don't believe that, and I know there's a lot of people that don't exercise that. But I think more people are just trying to tell stories than is commonly believed on YouTube and Reddit, right? Reddit thinks every single movie is agenda-driven, and I just don't believe that. Now, movies are a different animal because, like, there's, especially Hollywood movies, because there's so many talking heads. There are agendas. I don't think the agendas are what you think they are. I think the agendas are make us this money and maybe ego, right? Rather than we got to show the girl cry because we like it when girls cry or whatever, you know, whatever you think the message is, or ooh, girl boss is awesome, you know, that's, you know, can't show a woman being powerful and winning because, you know, then you're just woke and whatever, man. It's like these are fictional characters. They don't have genders, you know. They're fiction. They're not real. You stick your hands down their fictional pants, there's nothing there, man. They're not real. That's not a girl. It's not a boy. They're a character. It's fiction. I want my character to survive this. I want my character to kick ass and survive. For me, when I write him as a woman, I just like underdogs. I like underdogs kicking ass. It doesn't matter. It could be a skinny guy. I was 125 pounds, 6 foot tall when I was in high school. Skinny as hell. I like skinny, weak underdogs winning. And it's just easier to do a woman in a lot of these situations because, they're underdogs. Especially if you're talking about violent situations, right? Violent worlds, mob, or, whatever. Alien invasions or, whatever is going on. They're underdogs. So I want the underdog to kick ass. It has nothing to do with gender. But then people are going to see that message and say woke and whatever, because that's all they see. They only see what they want to see. They don't see what's actually there, what the actual intention is. Want underdog to kick ass, not the comic dog underdog, an underdog. I do agree that some stories are just for entertainment, but I also believe that some stories want to tell a message. One Piece, for instance, has such a strong theming that I believe he's trying to tell you a message. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously levels of shit. I think it's also just a sliding scale. I don't think it's black or white. I don't think it's on or off. In coding, there's either 1 or 0. I don't think that's it. I think, even me, where I actively try not to do messaging, there's a way I see the world. So that will be in there because I see the world that way. Unless, the character is evil. So if I'm going to make him evil, I'm going to make him see the world differently than I do. So then I arbitrarily make him see things in a different way. That could be messaging, possibly. So it's a sliding scale. My messaging is at a 1. C.S. Lewis's messaging is at an 8, right? As far as the priority you give it. For me, I want to entertain. I want to tell an entertaining story. That's what I care about. But I think people are more complicated than that. You can't just be all or nothing. A or B or 1 or 0 or whatever. There's always going to be nuance. There's always going to be some mixture in there, right? And his message is about dreams. It just keeps coming back. Follow your dreams and all this stuff and liberation and be free and do whatever the hell you want to do. Is there? And I think he's also where he's, there is a different venue here when you're a lot of kids are going to see what you're doing. I would be horrified knowing kids are going to see any of my writing. I want mature ass adults who have already figured out who they are and what they want to do. Then you're ready for my writing. Because I don't want the responsibility of giving bad messages to kids. Because here's the thing, while I don't believe people will become violent because of what they see, I think people are born violent and they're going to do it and they're just looking for an excuse to do it. And then I guess TV shows or video games can be that excuse, but it can be any excuse. That's what I believe. Still, very rich people spend millions and millions of dollars for 30-second commercials in the Super Bowl every year. Very rich people who have made a lot of money making money decisions, who don't throw their money away for no reason. Very rich people believe it moves the needle when you watch a 30-second commercial. They believe it's worth dozens of millions of dollars, counting the creating the commercial. The very rich people believe it's worth dozens of millions of dollars to run that 30-second ad during the Super Bowl when most people are going to be watching it. They believe what you see influences what you do. They believe what you see influences the choices you make. So who am I to argue with very rich people who've been making money decisions their whole life and that's how they get rich? I can't argue with that. I don't like to believe it. I really don't see how a 30-second commercial is going to actually make you want to buy Coke or Pizza Hut or whatever. But very rich people believe this and they do it every year. So who am I to argue with very rich people? So it's possible what you see can influence the choices you make. So I don't want the responsibility of kids watching my shit. But if I knew they were and I was paid a handsome amount of money to write something for kids, I would be very cognizant of the story decision I'm making and what I'm having the characters do and say, so as not to unduly influence them in a negative way. I would do that. So I think people writing for kids, which he definitely is, the One Piece author is writing for kids. You have to be a little bit more careful with what you're doing. So, and I think he is. Yeah, I think he's threaded that needle very well. So, Power and Death 1 the swearing contest last episode. And then immediately, as soon as I dropped this in there, it was like within a few minutes, I had come back to it, so I wasn't sure how long it had been. Immediately dropped another time in there. So I thought that he had seen that he'd won and immediately dropped back in there for another to try to win again, right? Just immediately, just right in there. So I said, this has the energy of hitting a buzzer-beating shot to end one quarter and immediately tossing up another three to start the next quarter. Wasted no time posting another prediction. And apparently I won the surprise, which I hate to do. I want people to find out as they watch the podcast. But he says, saw this in my recommended but didn't have time to watch it yet. So just posted a prediction before I forgot. God damn it. See, I thought you were doing something really cool. Then I end up spoiling the fact that, you won last time. So that sucks. But you should definitely get up with me in a comment, or if you're over on YouTube. If you're over on Patreon, I'm not sure if you are, send me a direct message. What you want me to watch. And one episode of anything, as long as I can find it. There's some obscure shit out there I can't find. But as long as I can find it, one episode of anything. Marakoyo. Would be funny to see you hate watch a series or two with the sole purpose of hating on it. I don't think I've ever seen a reactor do that. The funny thing is, that was one of my original intentions for this reaction channel. I would do reactions, but then I would also hate watch some stuff. Because I think that's funny. I do think it's funny to hate watch. Riff Tracks would do that. And MST3K before. They wouldn't necessarily try to hurt the feelings of the filmmakers, but they would be savage, right? And that's kind of what I was channeling. I wanted to do that. I really enjoyed it. I love it. I'm obsessed with MST3K. I was obsessed with Riff Tracks for years. Got tired of it after a while. They just kept doing shitty movies instead of blockbusters. I wanted them to do blockbusters because I thought that would be fun, right? You're watching a blockbuster in a movie theater, anticipating in a couple months you're going to see the riff tracks of it. You can start imagining the jokes that'll happen. And they just stopped doing blockbusters. So I kind of stopped watching them. But up until that point, it's fun to see people make fun of something if they're good at it. And the riff tracks and MSD3K people are really good at it. So that was my first iteration. My first thought for the channel would be I would do regular reactions, but then I also hate watching stuff like Cloud Atlas, for instance. Cloud fucking Atlas. Which is what I called it on Twitter all those years ago. Like when I came out of Cloud Atlas in theater, went home and started tweeting about how much it sucked. I said I wanted my money back. I was pissed off. Got a lot of interactions. And then it just became a running joke for years over my Twitter handle. It's just any movie that come out, people say it sucks. I'll be like, well, it doesn't suck as much as Cloud effing Atlas. And I kept calling it Cloud effing Atlas, right? It was always Cloud effing Atlas. It was never just Cloud Atlas. And so for a long time, it was a running joke. And so then I was going to react to it. I think I reacted to like the first 30 minutes of hate watching it and then didn't get any views and everything. But so I was going to do stuff like that. I was going to hate watch things that sucked. Try to make fun of it and make jokes of it and all this stuff. But it felt like I was doing a character. It felt like I was doing a bit, and I just want this to be naturalistic. I just want it to be my natural reactions. I don't want to force things. I don't want to be Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert is creepy. Sacha Baron Cohen, whatever, is creepy. When you're inhabiting a character 24/7 and you're not yourself, it's creepy. It's okay. I guess Baron Cohen is a little bit better because in the movie, he's just doing a movie. But he's that character for months. And Stephen Colbert was that character for years. And method actors kind of creep me out a little bit. And people who stay in character 24/7 really creep me out. I don't like it. I don't think it's healthy. There's something uncanny valley about it. So I've never liked those people that do that, and I started feeling like I was becoming that. I was like, I don't want to become a character, man. I don't want to portray a character. I don't mind doing a bit for a few minutes, but I don't want to do a bit for a few years. And I'm not a good actor. That's another problem. So if I'm doing something fake or false, it's going to come across as fake or false. It's not going to feel authentic, and people aren't going to jive with it. And a few times I tried it on my channel, that was the result. Like, people didn't gel with it. Because it was bullshit. And you don't want to be sitting out here bullshitting people. But as far as like things I genuinely hate, which I genuinely hate Cloud Atlas and I genuinely hate Death Note, doing it in however I feel, like there's been many times I went into a movie thinking I was going to hate it, and I've been like, damn, this is actually a good movie. And there have been times when I went into a movie thinking I'd like it, and I was like, damn, this movie really blows. So it can go either way, right? But that's what it has to be. It has to be the natural reaction. So if I hate something and people enjoy me hate watching it, I can see myself continuing to watch it. I wonder, would me redoing like Death Note even get any views? It's worth pondering. We keep kind of circling around this topic, right? I'm probably gonna eventually do it and then watch it get shit views, right? I mean, worth a shot, right? So yeah, theoretically, um, it's something I'm open to, but it's going to be authentic if I do it, right? So that's pretty much where I'm coming from. This is Ariel. On the topic of anime that I've dropped from boredom, the first one that came to mind for me, probably the most recent I tried, is Fruits Basket. You know, I keep seeing Fruits Basket as like on the list of some great anime. Like I've run across it several times with my little searches and things I do. I check out polls and check out lists from these stupid magazines, clickbait lists. It keeps showing up as like a good one. It's fairly popular, which is why I guess it shows up on these lists. But it's also more romance slash slice of life, and I think the humor just wasn't hitting for me. The characters also felt a bit kind of bland, and or not differentiated enough. Yeah, that's the thing. We were talking about characters being samey before. That's fine if it's across different anime. You don't want every character in your anime to feel the same. They should feel like different people from each other, even if they all feel very similar to people in other anime. They have to at least feel different from each other in your anime. Like, you're really dropping the ball if you're not accomplishing that as a writer. I also dropped Monster after a while because there just wasn't enough humor for my taste. This doesn't mean that these were bad anime, just maybe not suited for me personally. And that's exactly it. Because Monster is a great show. It's a great anime. Fantastic. Highly recommend. But if you don't like it, you don't like it, right? It's not a quality judgment. If you don't like it, you don't like it. It's that simple. I don't know about Fruits Basket. Maybe it's a great show. But I do know Monster is a great show for me. It may not be a great show for you. And finally, Hunter Stone. After the creator Alex Hirsch finished Gravity Falls, he was executive producer on a show called Inside Job. It was a show about conspiracy theories. Netflix canceled it after one season. I thought it was a really good show, and I'm pretty sure it got pretty good reception from a lot of people. Since you said this, I went and I downloaded the entire series. There are actually 2 seasons, 18 total episodes. But what usually happens is they commission one season, which is usually 20 episodes, and then they do half and half. So they start airing the first half as you're still producing the second half. And what probably happens is after the first half, they're like, okay, we're canceling it. But they'd already spent the money on 8 of the 10 episodes. And so they went to them and they said, look, you only have 8 episodes. You got to finish it up. We're pulling the money for the last 2. And so what they probably did was they had the season finale already done, probably a 2-parter or whatever. And they just pulled out 2 middle episodes. And so I don't know. But I'm going to react to it because I'm very excited that he did another show. And we got 18 episodes to play with. So that should be fun. All right. Well, that's all the Q&A. I'm doing this early. I'm doing this Friday, the September 12th. So I will reopen this back up if I get more comments before like Sunday when I drop this for early access. But my goal was to actually try to get early access for the podcast for once. So here we are. Here's me being early.